Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsoring partner, the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. I want you to take a quick second and imagine what our nation would look like if we boldly invested in our neighborhoods and cities and showed young people, particularly Black men and boys, real opportunities to build upon their God-given assets and live their best lives possible. That's the work that the Campaign for Black Male Achievement and my dear friend Sean Dove, CEO of CBMA, has been working on over the past decade. They've joined and supported thousands of leaders on the ground to elevate and accelerate this very vision and mission. Visit tbpod.com/partners today to learn more about CBMA and consider joining their membership and or donating to help them scale the impact of this growing field of Black male achievement.
You're listening to the Trailblazers.fm podcast, where we'll explore the stories of today's successful Black professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders. Join us to access the knowledge, resources, and tools of these accomplished professionals and come away with the know-how, confidence, and motivation you'll need to blaze your trail. And now, here's your host, Stephen A. Hart.
Yesterday at my church, my pastor shared that there are 3 levels to life. The first level he described as being sort of in survival mode, right? Survival, where you're just living day to day. The second level is where we're chasing after success in all its forms, whether it's the money, the title, the prestige, and power. And I love that he emphasized that success is largely an external pursuit, right? You give thought to that. It's pretty much true. Amazing takeaway from this, though, is that neither survival nor success is going to ever give you a true sense of fulfillment in life. Only significance, which is the third level to life, can do that, right? And so over the past several weeks, our pastor has been pouring into me about chasing a life of significance. And that, it's not just what we do with our lives, but it's about what we pass on. It's about our impact that we have on others. And as a parent, I obviously thought of the importance of what Kristen and I are passing on to our kids. We want to pass on some good things to both our children and to the next generation. And this line from a pastor hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, what we are leaving matters. What we leave will impact others for good or bad. And it really hit me hard, right? Because you and I, we've seen a great many cases of bad passing on bad, right? And if we don't have the right things in our hearts, in our minds, in our possession, we can't pass it on. If we don't have it, we can't give it. You can't give an inheritance you don't have, right? You can't pass on money to your children that's not in your bank account. You can't gift a successful business you don't own. So it's important we recognize that what we are doing, what we are leaving matters. And so today, this message really spoke to me, right? If the good Lord called me home today, I know that I'm leaving my family a financial inheritance thanks to Art Steele and episode 103, right? There's a will and an estate plan and an insurance policy that are going to take care of the family. But beyond that, I'm happy I've given this generation and the next generation this podcast. Right? I'm blessed to hear each and every day the impact of this show and what it's done in the lives of others. From day one, it's been my heart to impart the knowledge and the wisdom and the tools of the successful trailblazers of our day, knowing that it's going to help someone both today and at some point in the future that will go on to rise above and go beyond and blaze their trail in life. Last week in episode 199, I told you that podcasting ain't easy, but it can be fun and it can be rewarding. And today, I lift my head. I look back at the seed I planted over 200 weeks ago. And I didn't just plant it and leave it, right? I watered it, I nurtured it, I cared for it. I cared for this baby, my podcast, each and every week. Not a Monday morning at 5 a.m. went by that I didn't have an episode going live for you. Nearly 4 years now. And today we celebrate our 200th episode. We celebrate this milestone with you, our community, who I affectionately have called our Blazer Nation. And there's so many of you who listen week in and week out. And over the years, many of you have shared DMs, you've shared WhatsApp messages and text messages and social media posts and tweets and 5-star reviews. And in whatever way you did that, you gave me a big ups. You've let me know that you care. And most importantly, you've let me know that you're listening. And for that, I can't tell you how much I value, how much I appreciate every last one of those notes and messages. I just want to thank you because you are my motivational mission fuel. You're reminding me through those notes and those messages that my life is so much better when I'm pursuing this life of significance over this life of success. The success is absolutely important. The success of this podcast, even today, knowing that we hit this 200th milestone episode, huge. We are nearing our 300,000 download. We've now been downloaded in 140 countries around the world. Those are external metrics of success and they're great. But what's even more impactful to me is the impact we've had in each and every one of you. And so today I wanted to share a conversation I had with a group of the most active and loyal listeners of this podcast. Some have listened to all 200 episodes. Many have heard a lion's share of these episodes, but pretty much all of them have been with me over the course of this journey. And I was just blessed to have this first ever conversation. I don't know why we waited 200 episodes to do this, but we finally had our first ever Trailblazers listeners chat with 16 people who I consider our champions, our Blazer Nation elite, if you will. And I celebrate them and I celebrate you. And I'm so happy to share this conversation with you all. So hope you enjoy. I just wanted to open things off, right? Where we do all our conversations on Trailblazers. And first and foremost, like there are a couple people. First off, without anybody listening to the podcasts don't exist, right? But first thing I should probably do is give thanks and glory to God, right? This podcast does not happen without his blessing for 200 episodes. And a couple of people I'm thinking of right off the bat, my silent supporter, Kristen Hart. Hardly ever listens to an episode of the podcast, but without her.
That's right.
Allowing her husband's entrepreneurial light to shine bright.
That's right.
Happen, right? So
hear her voice every day, every episode.
Right?
Yes, that's
you hear
right.
her voice in every episode,
Yes.
all 200 episodes. She does the intro. As we talk right now, she's upstairs putting our crumb snatchers to sleep. So I'm so appreciative of her. Next person that I have to give thanks to before we start this conversation off would be my dear brother, Sean Dove, and our sponsoring partner, the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Sean is somebody I met 6 weeks into the podcast and literally sent me a DM in Twitter and said, yo, if you didn't create this podcast, I've been searching it for you for the last 6 months. And if you didn't create this podcast, I was going to have to. And Sean is a daily big brother, spiritual brother, a leader, a guide. Like rarely does a week go by where I don't get a text message or an email with a video or a podcast episode or a book or something else to help me fill up my tank so I'm able to pour out, whether it's in this podcast or in other things I'm doing. And the last two people that I have to give thanks to, because they're behind the scenes, they make this engine go week in and week out. Mike Slavish, who is the producer and the editor of the show, makes me sound good every week, takes out all my ums and ahs and pauses. Mike's been editing this podcast for the last maybe 120, 130 episodes, since maybe episode 70. And then last, it would be Miss Annette Richards. Annette, for the last 2 years, it's 2 years ago, October. Wow. I'm looking on Twitter every Monday morning and I'm like, yo, who is this fan who sends out better tweets than me about my own podcast episodes? And I'm like talking to Annette. I'm like, Annette, how about I share the episode with you in advance of, and you share your notes with me? And for the last 2 years, Annette has been so gracious with her time on the weekends. I'm so appreciative to her family to allow her to help me to create the show notes that you guys see on the website each and every week. And it stays checking in on me, making sure that the show notes go up every Sunday night. So obviously I wouldn't be here again without listeners, right? But I have to start off there and give love and props to everybody that makes this thing tick, right? So thought we could have some fun, right? And kick this thing off with a little bit of trivia, right?
Oh.
So I want to see who knows this. What was the first dates that Trailblazers actually went live inside of Apple Podcasts? Does anyone know? Annette, pause, because you might know this. Anybody else want to take a shot at this?
Can we use the app?
I'm just going to that.
Absolutely. Rob, you're here. What's good, brother?
December 23rd, 2015.
Well, December was when I published, but it wasn't when Apple went live. It was when I created the first welcome episode, but the actual date is a little bit more forward. And
January 29th, 2016.
Chaz.
Almost.
Almost.
It
February.
actually went live on February 1st, 2016.
I remember that.
But you're closest to it. So, yeah, Trailblazers. I remember standing in the kitchen upstairs and seeing that email come back from Apple, like, you're live. And I was like, what did I just do? So, question, how did you guys learn about the podcast?
I was actually looking for Black leadership. I remember entering those words.
Yeah?
Black leaders. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I found it, and I heard, I think, one of your earliest episodes. I'm like, First of all, what intrigued me was I sensed the accent, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I listened to the episode. I'm like, sounds really good. And I listened to everything that was already posted. I was outside. It was summer. And that's when I got hooked.
I know that is awesome. Like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people end up finding us through an app of some sort, but I always find it interesting. And there's so many, Tara, Rob, Kanika, Chaz, everybody here. I mean, many of you are past guests of the show. Met Rob through Nicole Walters, who's a past guest of the show. And my mother-in-law actually found an article about Chaz, and I reached out to him on LinkedIn.
Sure did. Absolutely.
Anybody else that actually discovered us through, some other format than us meeting in person or connecting directly?
How did we meet, Stephen?
I think we met through Kelly.
Yes, that's right.
Stephen, like for me, even though I met you twice, it was crazy. Like we connected around being a guest, but when I got the notice, I was like, why does that name sound so familiar? And I realized that you've been stalking me. Trailblazers has been stalking me when people retweeted things about it, right? And I was like, oh, this is that dude.
So it's Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, that would make sense. How will they tweet like 150, 200 times a week, right?
You sure do.
God bless E-Clean Show. That is awesome. Where do you guys listen to the podcast? I'm curious. Like, do you guys listen like on a podcast app? Do you guys listen on a website? Like, where's...
Both.
I put it in my car, baby.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Apple Podcast app.
Podcasts. Or sometimes if I'm at home, I'll listen through the website.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Website and app.
That is good to know, right? Like, we want to make sure some people are listening on the website.
Put in the work, website for the most part. And then I started to use a program called Castbox.
Yeah.
Because it downloads it automatically. So that because I mostly listen to you on my commute to work or from work.
Right.
So now when I pull out the app, it has already downloaded the episodes so I can, keep going.
That's good. This is good feedback for me, right? Because I'm always curious, like, where's your energy? Like, we were at Podcast Movement back in August, and I realized, I don't know if you guys realize, but Spotify is making a lot of headway in the podcast space right now and really looking to bring new traffic in. Apple still represents probably 70% of the traffic, but I'm like, all right, where do I put my energy, right? So picking your brains and understanding more about where everybody listens and where we should really give some love and some energy.
I think you should put some energy into more video podcast shows.
Yeah.
I feel like when you did the Eric Thomas video,
That clip,
I felt like for marketing purposes, it engaged me to like want to go listen to his full. I mean, I knew who he was, but he has a different energy on camera. And I think selectively, like certain, like for me on my podcast tour for the book, I am specifically trying to request certain shows that do video. I want people to get to see me, know me, and also feel the energy of the conversation. Even though I think a lot of people do a good job of doing it via audio, I just think it's that extra option depending on who you're talking to. Like if you're talking to Gary Vee, you definitely wanted that on video or something like that. So I think certain people have certain energy that you want to capture on camera.
So I'm happy you brought that up because this whole year I've actually been recording interviews through this platform, through Zoom. And it changed the whole dynamic of conversation, right? Because no longer was I just listening to somebody, and majority of my conversations now, we get on. It's the first time I'm being introduced to many of these people, just as, you're hearing the episode for the first time. I'm talking to this person for the first time.
Right.
And I found that the Zoom platform and seeing face to face, it changed the dynamic of that conversation, right? Because you can see each other, you can kind of feel energy, see gestures, body language, and so on. And I've been recording them. The truth is, dealing with a full-time job, crumb snatchers, the podcast, everything else, it's like, when am I going to find time to edit a video? So I've been capturing them and also trying to figure out Zoom and the technology. Because for a good bit, like I was recording it, but it was coming out all funky. And it literally took me a while to kind of figure out the platform to where like now I'm like, you know what? I could actually do more with the video. So thinking of how, but I'm happy you brought that up because that's something that I am hoping in the coming year to do more of for sure. So more trivia, right? Anybody knows back in 2018, we had our first wealth series and it was fueled by a study done that said, if nothing changes in the next few years, right, we're trending to zero wealth. In Black median households are trending to zero wealth by 2053. And that thing shook me, right? And I thought, what could I do? And so beginning of last year, had 6 episodes to open the year talking about wealth and how we approach a wealth gap. And we did it again this year and working on it right now for January of next year for our 3rd annual wealth series. But thinking of impact, right? There are so many episodes now that have fuel, but I tell you what, there's an episode in that 2018 Wealth series that broke down estate planning. And it's hands down one of my favorite conversations that I had because of the impact of that episode. So I wanted to pick your brain. Who knows the name of that guest that was featured?
I don't know the name, but I think it was episode 100. Because I know the Wealth series was 100 to 106 last year.
It was close. It definitely was in that pocket. Annette, drop it. You know who we're talking about.
Should I say it? Of course, Art Steele.
Art Steele.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how could I forget that?
Art Steele. Come on, Rita.
I worked with her. She's so great. My trademark lawyer.
Listen, if you guys don't have an estate plan, if you don't have a will, if you don't have a trust, if you don't understand what any of that means, Art's episode, I want to say it was 103. Somebody can prove me wrong on that one. But it was right now.
I'm actually saving it now so I can go back and listen.
Listen, Rob, it was one of the best episodes on the podcast. And there are people who literally reached out to me and reached out to Art. And because of that episode, contacted attorneys, took care of their estate plan, took care of a will, and their families in a better place. And, my heart for this podcast has always been, you hear me talk about it in the jingle, in the bumpers of this episode. I hope that this has generational impact for many others, both now and well into the future. That was the episode that carried it well into the future for me, right? Because those kids will never know, right? But because those parents listened to an episode and got that fuel, they moved forward and created an estate plan. If something should happen to them, those kids are taken care of, right? Families taken care of. So it was a really impactful episode. And I was just curious, what was your most impactful episode that you probably think back to and you were really moved by, right? That content, and it helped you to kind of change some things.
Steven, there were 2 that I liked. And one of them was with Miko Branch.
Yeah.
From Miss Jessie's. And it's funny, I think your podcast was the first time I really started listening to her. And ever since, I've been a fan. Every time she does any type of podcast interview, anything, I'm listening to her. Just really? The fact that she and her sister built that business just from the ground up. They really didn't take out loans. They just put their nose to the grindstone. Like, I was impressed by that. And then it was another sister, forgive me, I can't remember her name, but I think she came from Jamaica actually, but she moved to New York. I think she might be an esthetician. She's something in the beauty field. I think she had very close cropped hair, but the fact that she just started that practice, and she didn't originally want to start out in the beauty industry, but she's so successful and has worked with high powered people. I was just amazed by their stories just from the ground up.
You know, I love the thing about Miko's interview taught me to make sure I do my research. Because I tell you what, I didn't know that Miko's sister had passed. And until we got into the tail end of the interview and she actually opened about it, I literally froze when she started talking about her sister having passed. And that was one of my early interviews. But I realized at that point, because I habitually will get into conversation sometimes, not doing deep research, because I want to discover that person and have that come through in the call for you guys. But that was one that shook me because I was like, dude, you have to make sure you kind of know what you're stepping into. Luckily, I didn't step on any landmines, but that was a lesson learned. And it didn't hurt, but, you know, it was almost scary in the way in which I discovered that. And the person you are...
I can picture her face, but I just cannot recall her name.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Rosemary Ingleton. Dr. Ingleton.
It rings, yeah, doctor. Mm-hmm.
Old brain. Yes, and she's Jamaican.
Yes, her interview was awesome. I enjoyed it. Again, I don't know. I just like hearing how they started their businesses and just the trials and errors that they went through. I like those types of stories. So they move me. Just how some of them don't build their business in a conventional way. Like I said, Miko and her sister didn't take out loans. I was amazed by that because you always hear the opposite, but there's a different way you can do business, and I appreciated hearing that.
Amy says, Mignon, yes. Mignon Francois, man. The gems I love, the episodes I'm moved by are the people that no one knows, right? Like, I had no idea who Mignon Francois was of the Cupcake Collection. And let me tell you, man, like, that's another episode to add to the queue if you hadn't listened to it, because that was one of my first interviews that I did on video, early parts of this year. And I kid you not, I'm sitting in this room and this lady's going through her gratitude. And I used to freak out. Like, I'd ask a gratitude question and I know 45 minutes, right? Like, we didn't have to look on a clock. I just know where I'm at on my clock now in an interview. And somebody starts going like 10 minutes on gratitude. I'm like, this episode is like shot, right? Like, I'm not going to get through 10 or 12 questions, which is a typical conversation inside 30 or 45 minutes. Mignon took 20 minutes talking about gratitude. And by minute 5, I'm like this, like wiping tears, like, oh my gosh, this lady has me like fried. And I knew the moment I published that episode, it was lit, right? Like, and I've never seen my phone blow up with DMs on Twitter, on Instagram, people on the train, people in a bus, like praising Jesus on their morning commute, like listening to this woman's story. And if you hadn't listened to Mignon, she's somebody who literally took the last $5 and started a cupcake business, didn't know how to bake, and goes on to build a $10 million enterprise. And just moving story. I see Ruth is here as well. Ruth Bryan, I know you're not going to stay quiet because Ruth is one of those people in WhatsApp that, man, when your episodes go live, Ruth will let me know the truth. Real quick. But I know everybody kind of deal with, a lot of you guys have kids, but I appreciate you guys hopping on. And Sean is in an airport right now. There's so many, impossible to pick one. My favorite, though, was Steven's first solo episode when I described the genesis of the podcast, telling the story of my own journey, when my business collapsed. Rob, you're always hitting me up talking about episodes.
Hey, so episode 165, Steven, really blessed my life, man, because you were talking about the valley moments in life. And, that was one of the most challenging seasons for me, like you and I talked about recently. And just to hear you really encourage and be transparent and raw, I think that's always the blessing and always just good to be able to hear that you're not the only one in that struggle or in that mental challenge or fight or battle that you may be going through in that time. Because I think as entrepreneurs, we face a lot of battles. We face a lot of obstacles and opposition.
Yeah.
But it's how you respond when you're in those valley moments that oftentimes determine whether we get back on top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Just hearing that episode, like it was during that time for me where I needed to hear that. It was awesome, man. And of course, I enjoyed the recent episode with E.T. One of my other favorites was the one that you did with Chris Hogan. So, I mean, there's so many to name,
Right?
I think everybody on here would agree.
Yeah.
But one suggestion, man, you might want to do like a listener's top 10 favorites. Like, just like poll your audience and put that together for somebody like me who, only started listening in a few months ago.
We're going to talk about something at the end of this conversation that I think will maybe address some of that.
Right, because you did one last summer where you played like the best episodes that for like a week where you took a break.
Yeah, last May I hit a wall, which fueled our summer masterclass. I literally hit a wall coming into May. And listen, I have no idea where God graces me with energy to do this podcast sometimes, because I'll get into this seat and I have no idea where, I'm going to get energy to have a conversation. Most of these conversations happen at this hour at night, right? 9, 10 o'clock at night when these kids are down. And I just hit a wall. I could not process like doing an interview, doing anything. And I was honest in one of the intros. And I was just like, I'm just brain dead. I'm exhausted. I've been doing this thing for a long time. And everyone encouraged me to just take a break. And, I'd been doing it for so many Monday mornings that even though I knew I needed to take a break, I just didn't want to let go of not publishing an episode. And that's what fueled the masterclass last year. And me kind of just, doing some ponder replay and asking a couple past guests to come on and, and just do a masterclass. And then it was just funny where we got into April of this year and people were like, yo, so who we getting on masterclass this summer? And I was like, praise Jesus. The community received it. So, sometimes, I'll be the first to say, it's definitely some of this you just kind of rolling with. Even this conversation, I didn't know where this was going. I literally didn't know where this conversation was going up to yesterday. I was just like, Jesus, just handle, where this conversation goes. And, so like a lot of this I step into, but I commit to this podcast even through the fields, right? Of I'm not feeling it this week, but I'm going to see what happens. And I'm going to push through anyway. And it will be the first to tell you, there's many Sunday nights where I come in and I haven't done anything. And it's like 10 o'clock at night. And, I just do what I have to do and get the episode out. But, appreciate you guys for riding through it. And I appreciate you sharing, thoughts about, the episodes that impacted you.
Yours was the first podcast I ever actually subscribed to.
Really?
Yeah, because admittedly, I'm just not a super techie person like that. So I always listen to you, on my laptop. But I was like, okay, I'm going to subscribe to him. I'm listening to him enough. I'm actually going to do it on my phone now.
Wow. That's dope. So let me ask you, right? You guys have people that you're thinking about that you enjoyed the episode, but one of the things I'm thinking about as we move forward, right, is how do I go deeper, right, in these conversations? Does it mean that I necessarily need to make a longer episode? Do I even need to do more, right? Like, and the thing I step into every conversation with is, how am I going to give you value that you can actually put things into action, right? Like you can get, because if you're committing 30 to 45 minutes to listen to an episode, I want to make sure when you're done listening to the episode, there's something that you can put into application in some way, shape, or form, right? And so, I'm curious to kind of pick your brains and hear, has this actually helped you guys to blaze your trail?
I'll jump in and say, it definitely helped me. It's Jameson, man.
Jamie.
The episode with Kwame, as I told you, man, I kind of bugged out. I was listening to it while I was mowing the lawn, oddly enough. And I had to plan. We were planning to get together at the house, man. And that whole podcast on negotiation bugged me out to the point where I went to the liquor store And I said, man, let me try this. I'm going to try what this cat just told me to do, man. And I know, the liquor store is not probably the most inspirational place to start it, but I went down there and he talked about, listen, you can ask for whatever. And I just tried it. Something I normally wouldn't do is just negotiate the cost of something, and got a whole gang of liquor for a big discount. And that just really set me off. And I think, I called you like text screaming like, yo, man, I'm getting everything on discount. I really just started asking everybody, hey man, give me 20% off. Hey, I need this, and kind of going back and forth to the point where one of my wife's coworkers is a salesperson, and he was saying, man, I do this every day. I don't want to like actually have to do that like when I get off of work. And a couple of days later, he kind of texted me and he's like, man, I was up at Brooks Brothers and I asked him for 20% off and I got it, And he did the same thing that I did to you. And I called because it was just like, it wasn't in him to just ask or try and negotiate, even though he was a salesperson. So that really set it off. And for me, just to kind of wrap it up, that made me want to do business with Kwame. And I did a couple coaching sessions with him for a couple months. And then I took that information that he kind of taught me and applied it to my team. So I really kind of paid it forward. It started with that little nugget, at the liquor store. And then I applied what Kwame taught me about negotiation with working with my team, and had my team read his book. Nobody would play with me. So I didn't do anything entrepreneurial, but it definitely helped me change the way I looked at things, how I negotiated things, and then passed that on to my team.
Yeah. Blazing Your Trail is not entrepreneurial, right? But I love when Jameson is listening to episode Cutting the Lawn, because he will like blow up my text messages like, dude. So I appreciate you guys hitting me up and let me know, what's fueling you up. And Jamie, you've found application in other episodes. I know you're one of the big believers as well of art steel. So, I appreciate you, man. And sharing.
Oh, yeah. I got my whole estate plan after that episode. And we wrapped up this year because of that, man. So I really got to thank you for that, man. We spent a lot of time working on it, man, and we got it done. But it was that episode that really sparked it. I think when she put it in perspective that like that type of thing, you don't have to be rich to do that. I think that was it was a really grounding insight, because, when you hear that, you hear, oh, trust fund, baby. Or you hear, oh, trust, you think you got to be. The first time I heard about it was like, we had to do something for Lionel Richie, and everything we had to pay him had to go to this trust. So I just associated that with being like mega wealthy, super, super rich. And she really just democratized that whole idea of that, hey, you can just go and do this. You don't have to be some celebrity, or, you don't have to have that old money to do it. So that's another one that was a really impactful episode.
Yeah.
Wow. Stephen, to build on that, I think what your podcast has given me as an entrepreneur is a combination of application plus inspiration kind of together. What I find is when I look over the trends of the ones that I listen to, it pushes me to say, maybe I should dream bigger. Like, how am I thinking about this? I should look at it a different way. So it's one thing to say, like, Janice Bryan Howard is an inspiration to anybody. But then we watch people like us, and it's something to saying this person was where I sat, or this person is someone just like me, and they've been able to do things like, I look over the episodes that you did with Minda Hart, and like we're watching a revolution start in real time with someone who is not somebody else, not someone that you read about, someone that actually is people that you kick it with. And that then pushes, I think, entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs to really sit back and say, like, I have more power, I have more reach, and than I may think. And I have the tools and the resources to do that if I build and connect with my community. And I think that can be quantified, that impact that you're having.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think for me, when I came on your show, Stephen, there was a topic about how not to get wrapped up into failure. And I was at a point in my personal brand where I pitched my ideas to you. You didn't know me. I was at a point where I was trying to pitch to get my book deal. I had been declined by 30 plus publishers. And then I was all wrapped up in my mind about being a failure and not being accepted to get my book deal. And then later on, I got my book deal with entrepreneur.com, which are entrepreneur media press. And I think, to kind of piggyback on what she just said is I've been able to connect with other people that were in the journey just like me, that may have felt that they were going through failure, being able to connect with people like, Minda, Kenneth, Johnson, Simone. I built a level of business alliances and relationships with people that I may have never met if your show didn't exist. These people have my back. I have their back. A lot of these people that have been on your show are in my book. I've been featured in my book. You're in my book. So I think for me, I've been able to join the trail of other trailblazers by building a network, a professional network of people that are going through a journey that is either similar to mine, or I can learn something from their successes or their challenges. So I think that's what the show has definitely done for me.
Let me just pause you right there and give you props. You just talked about going through 30 no's, right? Like the persistence to go through that, right? And to persevere until you got this book deal with not no name publisher, but entrepreneur, right? Like props to that, girl. So, you know.
And I feel like the time that I pitched myself to your show, I had felt so defeated. So I said, I'm going to take this emotion of defeat and I'm going to start my own podcast show. So I just pitched myself. I just researched different African-American hosts and I found your show through, I think, Twitter or through Google. And I was able to pretty much, when Entrepreneur came back, months later and asked me what I had been doing, I said, this is what I've been doing. I've been on Stephen Hart's show. I've been on Minda Hart's show. I've been on 20 plus podcast shows, but your show, your initial opportunity was like the kickoff of me being able to not be pressed to get on a platform, but to develop an opportunity to mash up my brand with other platforms that were willing to accept me and willing to say yes when I was getting those no's.
I just want to leave this with you that the way to pitch a podcast, the way to pitch media is to share how you can bring value to someone's community. Kanika is one of the few people that just had like the perfect pitch to say, hey, I think, I've been listening to your podcast. I think I can bring this to your community. And the people who actually take the time to think through that, to have certain things in a row, right? Where they have a good digital footprint. I have somewhere to point my community to when the episode's done, right? You have a good website. I mean, just some simple things, right? That you presented that made it really easy for me. And then to come on the podcast, it's one thing to make the pitch and to land the podcast interview, but I'm sure many of you would agree, listening to content, you have people who have succeeded and they come on and they share their success. But the episodes that mean the most, that are the most impactful, are the ones like yours where you are totally transparent and you're totally open to sharing the failures, right? Because I learned the most from people sharing where those valleys happen, where those potholes are. So I know to avoid them. And I mean, anybody else side with me on that one, I'll get through interviews and I tell you the honest truth, like there are more than a dozen episodes I've done that you guys will never hear, right? There are conversations I've done where I get off and I'm like, this person left me nothing. And I can't share that with you guys, right? And I'll shelf it. And there are episodes where I get off where I'm like, yo, this is going to move some people, right? And so I appreciate you and I commend you for, being open and pushing through, right? And we've developed, a great friendship from it. And it's awesome to kind of hear how that networking, has happened. Tara just talked about Minda Harts. Minda is one of my bona fide sisters who, a year ago I saw when we were talking about the memo, right, more than a year ago. And she's like, yo, I'm writing a book. I'm like, yo, I'm building your website from now. Like, let's do this. And just watching Minda's star rise, is just amazing to me. And just so excited about, what she's doing. And on the topic of books, right, wanted to pick your brain. The last two questions that I ask on just about every episode, right, is about resources and about action, right? So what books are our featured guests reading that they think we should? And, the last question I ask everybody is what's one action that they should take that's going to help our community to blaze our trail? Do you guys find value in those questions? Are you looking to those books? Are you taking action on that you're recommending? Do you find value in those questions?
Yes.
Definitely. All the time.
Yeah?
Most definitely.
One of the last episodes, when you're dealing with Red Beach,
yeah, Ray McKenzie.
Call 5 CEOs and I just ask them how they're doing. Mm-hmm. I actually went through and did that with my client base. I reached out to a couple of them just to say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And, it has building relationships help you grow. And the more you help build relationships is the more benefit. Because I have clients who have been chasing for 6 years And this is the year. The last 6 months, I've gotten probably more business or referral from them than I've had in the last 6 years. You know what I mean? So you just have to, like Kanika, persevere and keep going because the payout will come eventually.
Love that. Love that. Love that. I always ask that question. And it's funny you said that, Andre, because Annette actually told me she did the same thing. Right?
Yeah.
Reach out to people.
As Sean likes to say, this is mission field and you have to act on the field.
Right.
You got to burn it up. You got to burn it up.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. I paused at some point in the podcast. I played with the end of that, but I found that to be of use. I can no longer pick up a physical book. Like there are books here on my desk or above me right here that, I'll get into a chapter here or there, but I am moving through audiobooks like it's nobody's business. This week, I was just listening to Vivid Visions, book that Sean hit me up on like last week. And in the last couple of weeks, I've gone through maybe 3 or 4 books. Easily in the last month, I've gone through like maybe 4 books, but all in audio. And I can just consume them and put them into application right now. So, recommend if you find yourself busy, you're already podcast consumers, so audio works for you. That might be a great medium for you to consume content of books.
Even over the last 2 months, I've listened to about 6 of the books that were mentioned.
Really?
On the podcast, from the Building a Story brand, you mentioned that one. Success Habits, Drop the Ball, The E-Myth, Minda's book, just to name a few.
Wow.
Yeah. So definitely.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So who's ready for more trivia? The last one, I think. How many countries has Trailblazers been downloaded in to date?
67.
67. Who else?
I want to say 100.
100. Donald Kelly says 155.
125.
125. Closest without going over is Kanika.
Nice.
139.
Wow.
139 countries. 90% of our downloads still come out of the US, but we've been downloaded in 139 countries. I've been trying for the last several weeks to hit 140. But, it's such a blessing, right? To look at some of these places I'll never go and to know that, the content's kind of reaching people in those spaces, right?
Just to piggyback on something else you said earlier with the failures, I've noticed a couple of your interviewers didn't volunteer the information, so you directly asked the question. In the interview to get them to talk about the failure or the lows. That's also in the Red Beach conversation because he didn't really mention his struggles. And he said, no, let me know about the times when it was hard,
Yeah.
So keep poking them.
I too kind of listen to other podcasters sometimes to get inspiration as to how to navigate and those conversations. Because I'm not somebody that's very forceful that way and keep poking. But Poppy Harlow of CNN has a podcast called Boss Files that I love listening to because she will pry and she'll just keep digging a hole, right? And keep poking for that response. And so, I've listened to several people who I'm listening not so much sometimes to the content is important, but I'm listening to their flavor and how they work through those conversations as interviewers, as experienced interviewers. So I'm happy to hear that. Because it helps me quite a bit. So are you guys back on the deck? Are you seeing the slides?
Yes.
Can you imagine?
Can you
Imagine, right? So like I said just a minute ago, I'm reading this book right now called Vivid Visions. What's Cameron's last name? Forget the guy's last name, but talking about creating 3-year visions and being extremely clear, right, about what you envision. And he's like, in part of the book, he's talking about getting with your team to create a can you imagine wall, right, of things that your team wants to see come alive, right, even if it's beyond the vision that you've laid out. And so I wanted to pick your brain and stir imagination for a minute for Trailblazers, right? What can you imagine for Trailblazers.fm in the years ahead?
Hey, Stephen, I love the idea of the boot camps and the networking piece. Because I'll just put it out there, I'm a transparent guy. I'm mixed. I'm black and white, so I can talk about my white folks a little bit more than probably you can. But no, I went to a networking event in Baltimore recently. It was big, like tech thing. Kevin Plank, one of his companies, were putting it on. And I noticed there weren't a lot of people that looked like us. That's just the reality of it. That with some of these CEO networking events, that type of thing that I attend pretty frequently, you don't see a lot of our group, at that level, networking, sharing business, establishing relationships. So I'd love to see more of that, especially in the DMV area and throughout the US. I mean, why not, man? And I got your back here in the DMV. So even if we started here and we make everybody that's on tonight, come to us in Maryland, we could, I think that would be really awesome, man.
I'm excited about the live events. It's something that scared me and excited me all at once. And I know it needs to happen. It needs to happen soon. Any other thoughts?
Teen Trailblazers. So there's so many things that, can you imagine all the wisdom that's in Trailblazers put into kids before they get all the bad habits that we all had because we didn't have access to that information? Mm-hmm. So something that's consumable for them in a way that they can then kind of begin their journeys with the power of the community knowledge.
Yeah. I thought that Trailblazers was initially going to serve a younger audience. And I realized that millennials kind of speak a slightly different language than many of the guests, because I'm 42, and many of the guests I bring on, right, are a little bit older. And while I have millennials that are listening to the podcast and enjoy it, majority of our listeners are 30 and up, right, 30 to mid-50s. And I would love, love, love to figure out a way that we have some of this content serving our younger audience, right? I mean, I'm deliberate that the content's wholesome. There's nobody coming out. If somebody happened to slip on cuss, it's out, right? We'll take that out. But I'm able to play this content in the car. And there are many times that Layla, not realizing it, she'll chime in and be like, yo, so this dude just said something about, and she'll ask me questions, which I'm forever, excited about when she tunes in, because, it shows the mission field for me in creating this platform, right? But I love that. I love the idea of how can we get this content to serve our youth.
Yeah, I think the visuals will help you with that, because I think a lot of them are plugged into watching
video-based
things on YouTube and Instagram and clips, and so once you, I think, give the visual aspect, can hook them. That may be the hook to bring them in.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point, and I think it takes a mature mind to listen to something that's audio driven, and it requires your mind to think and process and analyze and digest. And I don't know if the younger generation would want to just always do audio only. They look at things. That's why they're on Instagram, probably. That's why Instagram is probably their choice of social media. So maybe doing more IGTV driven gems that are snippets from the show. I don't know.
I think you're onto something. I mean, yeah, I'm watching the way many of the kids around me consume content. They don't longer watch the TV. They're on their computers, on YouTube.
And are they going to consume 45 minutes of content? It's going to have to be something that baits them into wanting to sit there for 45 minutes to listen to a video that is going to be engaging. So like my friend Mario Armstrong, his podcasts are only 5 minutes because maybe he don't have time, or maybe he just feel like he can drop gems in 5 minutes. And these generations, they can only take small pieces of content at a time.
Which I actually was playing with this for work. And it's providing mission field for Trailblazers. I recently did a 45-minute conversation on Zoom like this for work, and I ended up chopping it up by the questions. And it ended up coming out to be 2 to 5 minute videos, of each question, right? But that could be a way, we end up creating a playlist for an episode of different questions. But if you only saw a video that's responding to one question that you're looking for an answer to, that could be another way to slice up the videos and serve other audiences. I have one last thing I kind of want to pick your brains about or share with you, right, in finishing up the call. And I appreciate you guys staying on with me. We're pushing close to the hour mark now. But something that came up, and it actually brought this up about a month ago. And it's something that I was thinking about for a good long time. And so it's kind of like the confirmation. And then earlier today, I was talking with Sean, and he brought up something as well. And so I kind of know it needs to happen, right? And it's the elements of community. And what was the fuel behind it? You probably, I'll allow you to share your thoughts and what you expressed to me.
Sure. So the podcast does provide the resources, the knowledge, the tools, and it gives you mission fuel for your daily life or for your entrepreneurial pursuits. But after having consumed the content, if you don't have an outlet somewhere to connect, you're kind of like left alone in your island working with all this value. The community gives you a place to come back and check in and to go a little bit deeper than what you've received. So for instance, I think it was Andre said that he reached out to the CEOs. He followed the action to Blaze Your Trail. After having done that, where do you go? We're still looking for the next place to go to the next level, to go deeper with the content that we receive. And I find that for me, that's the next bit that's important. Because even sometimes you may take something and you don't know what to do with it. But coming back to the community and sharing, well, how did you take this? What did you do? Did you read the book? Did you follow the action? That kind of stuff, it helps you get more mileage, I think, from the content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, the one model I think about is with a men's association that I belong to, and they have what are called I groups, integration groups. And so, like where I live, you have several groups that meet, some of them once a week, some every other week, some once a month, but it's where we kind of go and sit down and really, it's more about like just men connecting and unburdening their stuff and really being able to talk through life and, where you can take away that face you show to the public and really just work through your stuff and come out, inspired. And it's that the way I see Trailblazers is that if you have those communities of practice where those little groups of people, those little pockets where they all kind of get together and they talk about their mission, their vision, their purpose, and working through their goals. I know, Steve, you have your, Saturday conference call. So imagine if it's not even people who are able to meet physically, but it's like you have these conference calls where people kind of get together and support each other through their stuff.
Yeah. So I hear you guys loud and clear. And, by the point at which this episode goes live, which is December 2nd, I am declaring and I'm going to work to make sure that we launch our Blazer Nation Listener Tribe. And it's going to be a community that fosters that, right? Like connection, networking, accountability, and so much more. So I'm hoping that many of you will serve as ambassadors because the honest truth is I don't have a big budget, right? I don't have a big media brand behind me. I have the support of Sean and the campaign for Black Male Achievement and make sure that, the cost of his podcast don't necessarily come out of my pocket. But I don't have, a big budget. So this podcast, while it's truly valuable to so many people, I don't have the resources to grow this. This is growing through you guys organically, but slowly. And so I also think the element of community will help this thing to grow even more, right? In the way that it has organically grown, we'll have more people coming into community, listening to the content and being able to connect with each other. So more to come on December 2nd. I'm holding myself accountable to that. On that day, stephenahart.com/200 will be the show notes for that episode. And there you will have links to joining the tribe. And I hope you will. So listen, you guys have been with me for an hour. This has been great. I'm raising a glass to you guys, saying thank you so much for listening in, hitting that play button as many times as you have. We're over 280,000 downloads at this point, and that's just a blessing to me. So I just thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Just pray God continues to bless you guys, and let's continue to keep the train moving. If I can serve you guys in any way, shape, or form, please continue to reach out and connect. And so much more is happening. For sure, you guys are going to be the first to know. So appreciate you. Lots of love. Thank you so very much.
Bye. Thanks, Stephen.
All right, Stephen, take care.
I'm proud of you.
I'm Steve Nehart, and you've been listening to the Trailblazers.fm podcast. If you're not yet doing so, consider following Trailblazers.fm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and feel free to connect with me over on LinkedIn. Whenever you're posting stories or social media posts about Trailblazers.fm, be sure to use the hashtag TBPod and hashtag Mission Fuel. We'll be able to see you, and I'll be able to show some love. And in case you're not aware, our show notes for all our episodes can be found on our website over at tbpod.com. Now, if today was your first time listening, I just want to say big ups, enough respect for checking us out. You've made this Jamaican guy really happy that you're here with us today. And I'd love your help with keeping this Black excellence flowing each and every week. So if you haven't yet subscribed, hop on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Search trailblazers.fm and subscribe, rate, and review us there. Be sure to browse through some of our past episodes. There are more than 150 published episodes now, and a little something is out there for everyone to help keep the knowledge flowing. We grow when you, as part of our Blazer Nation community, shares and invites your friends and family to listen to an episode you think might impact them most. We believe that someone listening to these inspiring stories are going to be moved to make significant changes that have generational impact for many others, both now and well into the future. Don't miss next week's episode. New episodes are released each and every Monday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern. Blazer Nation, go out today and find a way to rise above, go way beyond, and keep blazing your trail.